Hello and welcome to Impact. I'm Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and always a pleasure to join you to share information about the great things that are happening in our community. Today, of course, will be no different, and I'm very excited to have our guest to be able to talk to today because he is a representative of an organization that always makes a difference. In fact, they've been on the scene now for over 70 years in this community, and they continue time and time again to grind it out, to really leave an impact on people's lives, and we're going to tell you all about that today. Clay Vandiver is here with us. He is the Executive Director and CEO of the United Way of Madison County. Welcome to the broadcast, Clay.
Thank you, Kenny. Thanks for having me here today.
It's good to have you. You know, just before we came on the air, I said that this show is coming up on about a year old, and as I think in my own nostalgic way about things that I've experienced, the very first guest that came on this broadcast was from the United Way. So it's good to have a second opportunity to hear what's going on with the agency.
And we thank you for having us back. It's great that we can get out to the public and let them know what's going on for us and how we're helping lives, but we just say thanks for having us on again.
Absolutely. Well, you're new to United Way, so maybe that's a great place to start. We know you were in banking for many, many years, very well established in this community, and recently made a transition. So why don't we start then? Tell us, how did you make it to United Way?
Yeah, grew up here. This is home, so began in banking 35 years ago plus with the old Central Bank that became Compass Bank and then BBA Compass, but served in the community in the last 20 years with many nonprofits. Went on the United Way board in 1998, stayed on the board until 2003, but ran the campaign as campaign director in 2001. So just had a love for United Way and a passion that goes back to many, many years. But coming up on retirement, it was in my heart to kind of go back and serve somewhere in the community in a nonprofit or a church. And talked to my pastor several years ago about retiring, and he put it on my heart that you've got to give back and take your skills and your leadership and your visionary skills and help someone. So it was just amazing. The good Lord put in my life some great friends, and one came up to me in May right before I announced my retirement and said, "We need help at United Way. You know, we need a new president, CEO to step in. The openings just happened. Who can we find?" And so. Here I am, 8 weeks later on the job. Now that was May, but over the summer I did take about 6 weeks off in between finishing a 35-year career and starting here.
Well, you deserve that, of course.
6 weeks, sure, 6.
Absolutely. Well, you know, one of the things that I'm always excited to talk to folks from United Way about is what's happening with the organization, what direction is it moving in, and all the great things that are happening. But one of the things that I think I really want to talk about at the very outset of this discussion is the idea that United Way 2014, 2015, well established, like I said, in this community over 70 years. Many people have perhaps over the years given through payroll deduction, made contributions, and been even bigger donors at times. But a lot of the younger generation doesn't always connect with United Way. They see all these other options out there for giving, and they're philanthropic a lot of times, but they don't necessarily understand the history of United Way. And then there are some people who historically have given to United Way who've kind of gone in a different direction now. Talk about what the United Way represents in a community like Huntsville and Madison County.
Yeah, I think you could go to just the core of who we are. You know, we're that very unique convener in our community and in every community. We convene and bring together unique groups. We bring together city governments, corporations, individuals, with volunteers, with donors, with the users of the services, and we collaborate and bring all of those parties together. There's nobody in the community that really does that but United Way. Now, there are nonprofits that reach out and help a certain segment, and there are great nonprofits throughout the community. It's in the number of 200 plus. So, but no one really does what we do, which is kind of go out and speak on behalf of dozens and dozens of nonprofits to the community and say, here are the needs that we have found through all the resources and all the impact that these nonprofits are doing on our community. Help us help them, help us with a helping hand to help them. And so there's that uniqueness that United Way brings that is just unlike others. Now, no doubt over the last dozen years or even longer, more nonprofits have sprung up, great causes, great needs, lots of people with a real passion And so it stretches all the resource dollars in our community. And that's what we'll probably get into today, is how we can do more.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about that right now, because United Way, like many other charitable organizations, is being challenged right now. There are a lot of companies, again, that are willing to give and have provided opportunities for giving. And then we have a situation where we've just come through a major recession.
Right.
And people's dollars have dwindled in many ways, and they've had to make tough choices about where they allocate their dollars. Yeah. What are those challenges for the United Way right now?
Well, but think about it. When you're in a tough economic time, if you're a CEO and your employees' morale is maybe a little low because you've had to maybe stymie pay raises, or you've had layoffs, or both, where you typically hate to go back out to your employees and say, oh, by the way, consider giving away, more of your dollars to the community, to those in need, at a time when those employees are really in a time of, wow, it's tough at home, it's tough on the job. So we're facing that because we're coming through and out of a recession that's been pretty long-lived. Many economists said this was going to be that 6 to 10 year length recession, more so than the 2 to 4. So we're hopefully towards the end of that, but it's straining the resources we're bringing in. The needs aren't shrinking, the needs are growing. So we're having this mismatch of needs are growing, the financial needs are growing, the resources are growing, and dollars aren't flowing upwards. They're actually flattening and declining in sometimes. So what we've got to do is help the public understand the message that there's a lot of needs. We hope in your situation, at your home and your household, that things are improving. Think of us, think of those that are in need, and reach out and let us help reach out for those young children, senior citizens, single parents, the unemployed, the homeless, and help us help them. And that's the message that we've got to deliver day in, day out.
And talk about the contemporary challenges faced by organizations like United Way in this context. Traditionally, we thought about people in need as people who were perhaps substance abusers, homeless people, people who were mentally ill, and that population certainly exists out there.
Right.
But in a contemporary sense, we now have another group of people out there. We have people who are underemployed, who are just making it from one day, 1 week, 1 month to the next. We have people who are perhaps going through divorce, and they're having to have a shift in their lifestyle. So they're moving back in perhaps with their parents. We have an aging population, so people are taking care of their parents now more so than ever before. And you have the non-traditional person who has a need. So when I talk about a person, as I said recently to a group, when you think about who needs United Way services, just look at the person next to you.
Yes.
And this is a group full of people who were employed and probably doing fairly well in life, and families are okay. But the reality is that could be any one of us at any time because of circumstances. And I want you to just talk about the value of United Way in times like those.
Yeah. Well, a great example, a live example. 2 weeks ago, a car drives up in the parking lot of United Way. A young woman gets out, 2 young kids with her, and she just left a job a few weeks earlier and left a community outside of the state, moved to Huntsville because of just some connections through some friends. But here she was living in her car. Very employable, but needed some medication that was just a normal medication that that she takes daily. She needed food for her children and for herself, and she needed a job interview or two to kind of find and so she was just weeks earlier, just in a relationship, it falls apart. She's out of a job. She moves away from the city she's in, and she's in our community. Now she's one of us. And so what we did is we helped her find the needs that she had. We helped find her the medications and the needs on that side. We actually helped with a couple of job interviews. And so, but she's just one example. Many are just similar to that, where a neighbor right down the street from any of you or I or our friends that loses a job unexpectedly. And for some reason their savings or something have been depleted because of maybe a aging parent. And all of a sudden they look up and they're worried about the next mortgage payment or car payment or meal. And it's not that homeless person that you think of, or it's not that person that's just had misfortune most of their life. So it really is a changing time for all the communities and cities throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, but Huntsville's not immune to that at all.
Yeah, and so each year you make a call for action, and that call for action is to get the community engaged with, first of all, knowing what United Way represents to them, and then making the investment in the process. There are lots of ways that people can do that, and so talk about some of the ways that people can invest in partnering with the United Way.
And there's financial, and then there's volunteers that are needed. So there's a piece of this puzzle that's not about money. The volunteer center that we manage and find resources for and help resources for, we just went over 1,100. I actually was the 1,111 volunteer on the website this week. They said, we need you to be on the website to volunteer. And so it just shows you we've got over 1,000 people that we're networking and helping over 170 nonprofits with the call to need that they have, which is manpower or need in a particular moment in time. It may be a fundraising effort, it may be an activity that they need real people for. But on the financial side, which is quite often what we do day in, day out, is we're reaching out now to companies and corporations really from July, August, all the way to mid-November. A call to action to say, please let us come back again, or maybe for the first time come into your company. Bring with us our support partners, our agencies that come with us, and tell the stories of the people that are being helped. The young child that doesn't have a pair of shoes that fit them anymore. And Hill's Clinic will sit there and give a child a pair of shoes when they look down, and they've cut the toes out of the Converse so the toes could stretch out beyond the shoe because her feet were too big for those shoes. So a young child gets a new set of shoes. She gets a dental checkup and a health checkup. And that's where the resources and contributions that you and I and all of us make really gets down to who the needs are and where the needs are. So the call to action more in this time of the year is we need everyone to kind of open up their hearts and their minds and their checkbooks to help those neighbors around us that need help.
Yeah. And of course, for many years, I know I was a young counselor one time in my life, and I was working for what is now Phoenix, it was Huntsville Rehab Center. And one of the first challenges that was given to me as a young counselor just out of college was give to United Way. And so I think I've had like a 30-plus year relationship with this organization in terms of my own payroll deduction and my commitment. Now, of course, I'm serving on the board of United Way, which is a privilege, and served as campaign director last year and an incoming chair now. So the opportunity to serve this organization is one of the most cherished things that I know in my own personal life, because I see what happens when lives are touched and lives are changed. And you talked about that young lady earlier with the kids who is in transition right now, and how just the opportunity to share her concerns and her needs made an impact in her life. And I can just think about the hundreds of people in our community who have the potential to be touched in the same way. One of the things that I know you're very interested in doing is continuing to tell the United Way story as something more than just statistics and numbers and dollars even, but the idea that the work that's put into this process has a lasting impact on people's lives. Is that right?
It is, and because many of us that have been, say, in payroll deduction cases with our support for 30 years, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, we understand that story. But for those people that are maybe new to the community or new to United Way in a sense of really not understanding exactly what we do, we've got to reach some clarity with that group and deliver our message and deliver the scope and how large that is in our community and every community throughout the U.S. But in our community where we're living and working each day, we need all the citizens to understand that United Way isn't just an organization that's a building. It's just not a brick and mortar structure. It's where real lives are being impacted and helped. And we can't do that without the resources of those that can give and those that have abundance in their life. And so when we go out there, we're educating new potential donors. We're going to companies that have brand new employees that are conducting for the first time for that employee a rally or a campaign to discuss their annual chance to take a piece of paper and a pledge card and to consider giving. It's for the first time, maybe it's a new job for a young man or woman that's for the first time being asked. And so we've got to help deliver that message real clear of what United Way does so that that employee has a chance to say and have a real informed decision to say, okay, now I know what good work you're doing. If we don't help with that messaging, that marketing, that messaging, then we've let the community down to some extent.
Yeah, we're talking with Clay Vandiver, who is the President and CEO of the United Way of Madison County, and we're delighted to have him here with us today. Clay, you mentioned messaging, and I know that's a big part of what you're thinking about and talking with folk about and working on. And we know that social media is huge today, and that without using social media, there perhaps may be a missed opportunity to reach people. So we got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you got all these different platforms out there that people are communicating with and being engaged in. Is this something that United Way is going to be finessing?
We are. We're using it today, but probably not to the extent that we know we could or should. Interesting enough, we sent out a message to a young professional in the community that is giving some consulting on how to use social media better. And we asked this young lady to help give us some feedback. And within 15 minutes, she had 5 bullet points of how we could improve our messaging on Facebook and other sources. So we thought we were doing a fair job, and let's say we are, but boy, you can really do a much better job. I met with someone this week, and they said that they had helped a few companies set up kind of that social media for them. And she got a quick call back, and she says, "Well, you didn't tell us that we've got to interact with this every day and all throughout the day. We just thought we set it up, you know." And so it is something that once you set it up, you've got to react and interact and communicate. Because I was at a session this summer where a lot of nonprofits in the community were together, and the session I really had an interest for was about this messaging and reaching out to young people that want to give and they want to get involved. But they're not picking up a lot of the old traditional methods of media, you know, whether it be watching, you know, a TV show like CNN or Fox or reading a newspaper. They're picking up most of their information from their friends and on their iDevice or their iPad. And so we've got a message to them in that way. And then really, you think about it, cultivate them, because those 25, 20, 30, 35-year-olds are going to be sitting in those CEO chairs, making those decisions in a few years to allow United Way to come in and visit their employee base. So it's as much cultivating over a longer period of time, these next 5, 10, 15 years, as it is just cultivating brand new donors today. Yeah,
and speaking of brand new donors, I know one of the populations that as President and CEO you'd be thinking about would be the fact that this is a huge college community. We've got all of these different schools, and we talked about volunteers earlier. Obviously there's some resource opportunities there, and some of the classes like maybe social work, psychology, and sociology classes would be interested in doing those kinds of things. But that's a huge population of potential givers and supporters and volunteers. And this is a college-rich community where you're having, I think, more and more young people who are asking the question, what can I do? Interesting enough, we had 15 volunteers in our office this morning from Oakwood University. Said, we called us, and they do this every year, and sometimes multiple times, we'd like to volunteer. How can we help? And we had put them out in the community doing some things, and we said, look, let's get them in the office this week and kind of see the behind the scenes of things that we're doing, how we're prepping for rallies, and how we're folding T-shirts to get out to a rally and get their hands-on experience. So, but just not Oakwood, but A&M, Alabama A&M, and UAH, and all the other, Drake, and all the other institutions, Calhoun, that have got just a world and a sea of students, sea of young people. I was in the UAH president's office last week talking about the same thing, about how we can reach out to their employees and their students and get from them the needs that need to be met. Some are volunteer, some are call to action volunteer, but some are resources and giving. So you're exactly right. You think about the tens of thousands of students. We've got a great youth program. I met with a CEO yesterday that's got a passion to grow our youth council programs and our connections
and our young professional organizations that have been formed. We know that's the leadership of our future, the leadership of our community, the leadership of our companies in our community. So we've got to tap into that. It's just a must. It's a must.
And then, of course, you've got your needs assessment that you recently completed. A very important process which really connects the community in a very powerful way because it involves focus groups, hearing from partners, supporters, volunteers, other agencies, lots of stuff, internal stuff happening with United Way people. And so it's important along the way, while you're doing the job that you're doing, to kind of test what's going on and get a sense what's happening in the culture in which you're serving. How did that process go?
Yeah, it's a process that you think about. You need to step away every few years and look at the entire, let's say, community from a 50,000-foot level and then drill down. But it's good for a company, it's good for a community to sit there and do a needs assessment like we do every 4 to 5 years. It just culminated. We're getting ready to release the report to city government leaders, community leaders, agency directors and leaders, and all of those constituencies around the community, the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to speak at their upcoming board meeting to give them a flavor of what that's saying. But it's validating some things. I went back and read the 2009 assessment, the 2004 assessment. It's validating a few things that are lingering. Some things are getting replaced, and healthcare, for instance, a good example of healthcare, no doubt with changes in healthcare, improving and making more health care available. That's fallen down the ladder of health concerns. Taking its place, though, are mental health, which has not been addressed very well with the current changes, vision care for adults, dental care for adults. So some things, it didn't fall off the list, but amazingly, maybe not so amazingly, it did fall down the list. So you look at that. I looked at crime in neighborhoods. Popped up in the survey this year, not so in 09 and 04. So you're sitting there going, that's something the city leaders want to hear about is we want safe communities. So wasn't way up the list, but it popped up for the first time. So all of us as concerned citizens say, we're working on that, have been working on that, let's continue to work on that to make sure it's a safe community to live in. And then you get to the education pieces, very similar things, young single parents that need some help either with child care or an educational process so they can get back in the workforce. So some similar things popping up, some new ones popping up. It's going to be a good read for all those that get it in a few weeks. We're glad that it's a very broad-based, almost 1,000 respondents that came together. So we feel good it's a very validated document, but shows all of us what we need to work on.
Yeah, and I know that transportation has to be one of those things that continues to pop up. I'm from New York City and come from an environment where I understand the ease of transportation, and then to have to come here, and of course I've been here a long time, I've seen the evolution of the process. We're getting somewhere, but there's still a long way to grow. Because of all of the needs. I mean, we're a growing community. We have more needs than ever before because the community is more diverse. And then we have the aging population. We have all these things that are happening, and people are still retiring to Huntsville. And so there's a lot of things happening. And I think that the work that the United Way is doing to kind of assess the community, to take the pulse of the community, is very important in that process. We, of course, have just a few minutes left in the broadcast today, and I really appreciate you once again sharing all this great information. If people want to get more information about how they can learn about the United Way or how they can be a volunteer for United Way, tell us about a website or phone number and that kind of information.
Go to www.madisoncountycares.org, madisoncountycares.org. That'll pull you into our website. It'll also link you into the volunteer website if that's something that is a passion. It's a very interactive and great volunteer website link that really prompts you and I to say, hey, what are the things that you're passionate about? And it kind of funnels you into those agencies around the area that need help. And then when you raise your hand, it prompts you with emails to say, hey, Kenny, and Clay, you decided that you could help on this date. Can you still help? And so it helps do that. And but they can go to that. They can call our office, 256-536-0745. But the website's a good link, and we'll connect them real quick.
All right. And we encourage people, of course, to continue to live united and be supportive of this agency that's making such a huge difference. Clay Vandiver, President and CEO of United Way of Madison County, thank you for being here with us today.
You're welcome, Kenny. Thank you.
Appreciate you. We want to thank you for being a part of our broadcast also today, and we hope that you'll continue to tune into Impact on a regular basis. We promise that we'll keep you informed about all the great things that are happening in our community. As always, I'm your host, Kenny Anderson. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.